The wind in the high desert has its own voice. It is not the soft rush of lowland air, but a sharp, clean sound that scours the rock and whistles through the skeletons of long-dead juniper. On this night in 1878, the voice was a warning. Winter was coming early to the borderlands of Utah and Arizona. Frost was already gathering in the shadows, a white powder on the deep red earth. Tala Nez rode her pinto stallion along the rim of Red Mesa. She did not feel the cold, or rather, she did not acknowledge it. The cold was a honing stone. It kept the mind sharp, and Tala's mind was always sharp when she rode this path. To her left, the mesa fell away into a canyon of profound blackness. Down there, hidden by the night, was Coyote Wash. She closed her eyes, just for a beat. The smell of smoke, thick and greasy, filled her memory. Not the sweet smell of her aunt's cook fire, but the acrid smell of burning wool, scorched timber, and fear. She had been a girl then, but she had fought like a warrior. It had not been enough. The soldiers had come, and the wash had run red. Her younger brother. She pushed the image away. Her oath had been sealed that day, not in words, but in silence and stone. She was a guardian of this land. She would not let the fire come again. Her stallion nickered, tossing his head. He smelled home. Tala looked ahead. The hogan of her aunt, whom she called Shaimasani, her grandmother, was a low dome of earth and cedar, set back from the rim. It faced the east to greet the rising sun, but the east was a void, and the smoke hole in the hogan's roof was dark. There was no thread of gray smoke. This was wrong. Her aunt's fire never died. She swung down from the pinto, her moccasins making no sound on the hard-packed earth. The horse stood, ground tied. Tala did not approach the blanketed doorway. She circled the hogan, moving like a shadow against the dark structure. She listened. Only the wind. No sheep. No quiet song. She placed her hand on the worn grip of the knife sheathed at her hip. She crept to the doorway and pulled the heavy blanket aside. The smell that hit her was not sage or mutton stew. It was sharp, chemical, like acid and burnt magnesium. It stung her eyes. In the center of the dark space, where the fire pit lay cold, a figure was slumped. A woman. A white woman. She was huddled over a strange, skeletal box with 3 legs, her head bowed as if in prayer to it. A large, square leather case was at her feet. Tala's knife was in her hand, the blade gleaming faintly. "Who are you?" Her voice was low, rough from the trail. The figure jerked upright, making a small, terrified sound. In the gloom, Tala could see her face was pale, smeared with grime. Her hair was coming undone from a practical bun, and her lips were cracked and dark. She wore a traveling suit of dark wool, but it was torn at the knee and stained with mud. She looked young, maybe 25 winters, but she was exhausted to the bone. "Please," the woman's voice was a dry rasp. "I mean no harm. The door was open. I was just resting. She tried to get to her feet, but her legs buckled. She was starving." "My aunt is not here," Tala said, her voice flat, unmoving. She did not lower the knife. "I know. She left. She told me she was going. The woman, Clara, was breathing fast. A relative. She said 2 days ago. She said I could wait." This was a lie, or half a lie. Her aunt would never invite a stranger in. Tala studied her. A birthing ceremony was happening. That part was true, but her aunt would have secured the hogan. This woman had let herself in. "You are trespassing." "I am sorry. I am being followed." The woman's eyes darted to the dark doorway, as if expecting the wind itself to turn into a man. Tala's gaze moved from the woman to her equipment. "What is this?" she asked, nodding to the box. "My camera," the woman whispered. "I am a photographer. My name is Clara Monroe." She looked back at Tala, her eyes wide with a desperate, intelligent fear. "And they are going to kill me." Clara Monroe had not slept in 3 days. She had run from the mining town of Ash Hollow on foot, carrying what she could: the camera, her satchel of plates, and the ledger. The camera was heavy, the ledger was heavier. She watched the dying woman who had found her. This was not some frontierswoman. This woman was something else. She was lean and hard, and she held the knife with an easy familiarity. Her stillness was the most frightening thing about her. Clara had dedicated her life to observing, to capturing the truth through her lens. She saw the truth of this woman. She was dangerous, and she was in her own place. Tala stepped fully inside, letting the blanket fall, plunging the hogan into near-total darkness, save for the faint starlight coming through the smoke hole. Who is they? Ephraim Kincaid, Clara breathed. The name felt like a curse. He was the railroad. He was the mine. He was the coming civilization that the Eastern papers praised. Clara had been hired by him, or rather, by one of his subsidiary land companies. Her job was to take pictures of the glorious West, the empty tracts of land ready for settlement, the noble progress of the Iron Horse. But the land had not been empty, and the progress had been a lie. She had used her camera for its real purpose. She had documented the families being forced off their homesteads. She had documented the armed regulators Kincaid employed. And then, in the Ash Hollow office, she had found the proof. "They say I stole from the company," Clara said, her voice shaking. "A book. Company ledgers." "Did you?" Tala's voice was stone. Yes, there was no point in lying now. Clara reached for a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, her fingers numb and clumsy. She fumbled with the knot and pushed the cloth aside. It was a thick book, bound in leather the color of dried blood. He calls it a ledger. I call it a confession. She held it out. "It is all here. The bribes to the judges in Santa Fe, the payments to Sheriff Crowder in Ash Hollow, the real maps, the ones that show his railroad is planning to go right through here, Red Mesa." She paused, her breath catching. "It lists the dates. For the removals, he plans to clear this whole area to mine for sulfur. He owns the politicians. He owns the law." Tala looked at the red ledger, then back at Clara. This white woman, with her strange machine and her stolen book, had brought the apocalypse to her doorstep. Kincaid was a shadow they had been fighting for years, a snake in the rocks. This woman had just kicked the snake. "You must go," Tala said, her voice final. "You bring Kincaid's fire here. This is Dine Land. We will fight our own battles. We do not need your white man's paper." "This paper is the only thing your world understands," Clara argued, a sudden, surprising surge of strength rising in her. "He will come here and say he has a legal right. This book is the only thing that proves he is a liar and a thief. Without it, you are just obstacles." The word hung in the chemical-scented air. Obstacles. It was the word the soldiers had used. Tala's face was unreadable. She saw the truth in what Clara said, but she also saw the cost. "My aunt's hogan is not a fort. You cannot stay." Clara's burst of anger vanished, leaving her hollow. She slumped back against the camera tripod. "Please, just for a few hours. I am so cold. I cannot run anymore. They will find me in the dark." Her teeth began to chatter, a violent, uncontrollable rattling. Tala watched her. The woman was finished. Another hour in the wind and she would be dead. The oath she had taken at Coyote Wash was to protect her people, her land. Was this woman part of that, or was she the threat? The wind howled, pressing against the hogan walls, and beneath the wind, from miles across the mesa, came the faint, steady thump, thump, thump of the drums from the prayer ceremony, a reminder of Hozo, the balance, to turn away a person dying of cold, even an enemy, was to invite imbalance, to create a ghost, with a sigh that sounded more like frustration than pity. Tala turned. She walked to her saddlebags, which she had dropped by the door. She pulled out a strip of dried mutton and a water skin. She did not hand them to Clara. She dropped them on the dirt floor. "Eat," she commanded, Then, in a single, fluid motion, Tala untied the dark blue neckerchief from around her own throat. It was woven wool, thick and warm. She held it out. The wind is sharp. Clara looked at the offering. Her hand trembled as she reached out and took it. Her stained fingers brushed Tala's hard, calloused ones. The wool was warm from the other woman's body and smelled of cedar and clean dust. Clara wrapped it around her neck, the warmth a shocking comfort. She uncorked the water skin and drank, the water tasting of minerals and leather. She tore at the meat, chewing mechanically. "Thank you," she managed to say. She looked up at the Dine warrior, who stood like a sentinel in the center of the small, round room. And then, as the water cleared her head, Clara's mind, trained to recall details, to see patterns, clicked: the face, the high cheekbones, the straight, strong nose, the eyes that seemed to see everything. She had seen this face, not in life, in a print. "I know you," Clara said, her voice suddenly quiet and clear. Tala tensed, her hand dropping back to her knife. "You know nothing." "No, I do," Clara insisted, her journalistic memory taking over. "I was in Santa Fe, researching the old land commission files. I found a box of photographs, government photographs, from the inquiry after Coyote Wash." She saw the flicker in the woman's eyes. There was a picture of the survivors, a few women, some children. The caption listed their names. Clara looked at the warrior, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a threat, but as a person from a photograph. "Your name, your Dean name, is Naashyei Asa." Tala went absolutely still. The air in the Hogan seemed to crackle and freeze. Spider-Woman, it was her war name, given to her by the elders after the fight. The name that meant she was a weaver of her own fate. A protector. It was a name spoken only by her clan, in sacred moments. To hear this white stranger, this ghost, speak it in the dark, was a profound shock. It was as if the woman had reached inside her and touched her heart. The suspicion in Tala's eyes turned to a cold, burning anger. The woman had not just trespassed on her land. She had trespassed on her soul. Clara saw the change. She saw the fury. She had overstepped. "Terribly, I am sorry," she stammered. "I did not mean I remember." Tala did not answer. She spun on her heel and strode to the doorway. Ripping the blanket aside, she stared out into the vast, frozen darkness. The mesa was silent. The drums had stopped. The dilemma was no longer simple. This was not just a stranger. This woman knew things. She carried Kincaid's poison, and she spoke sacred names. Helping her would bring the soldiers, the fire, the end of everything Tala had sworn to protect. But turning out a woman who knew her name, that felt like a different kind of betrayal. And as she stood there, caught between two impossible choices, her sharp ears caught a new sound, cutting through the steady sigh of the wind. It was not the drum. It was not the wind. It was the rhythmic, metallic chunk of iron horseshoes striking stone. At least 3 horses, moving fast up the Ash Hollow trail. Tala looked back at Clara, her face a mask of stone. "They are here." Clara's blood turned to ice. She scrambled to her feet, clutching the red ledger to her chest. "He knows," she whispered, her voice raw with panic. "He knows I have the maps, the real maps, the ones listing the bribes to Judge Harrow in Santa Fe, the schedules for removing your people." Tala's face hardened. She had not needed this confirmation. The sound of the horses was confirmation enough. She moved with a speed that defied her previous stillness. She kicked dirt over the small, cold circle of her aunt's fire pit, scattering the gray ash. There was no fire, but the habit of a warrior was to leave no trace, no comfort for the enemy. The wind, finding the open doorway, eddied inside, lifting the fine dust. It tasted of endings. "Douse that," Tala ordered, pointing to the faint chemical smell. Clara looked confused. "It is not lit, it is just the chemicals." Tala did not waste time arguing. She grabbed the water skin from Clara's lap and poured the last of the water over the glass plates and bottles in Clara's satchel. A small, hissing sound met the air. "Now," Tala said, grabbing the woman's arm, "you will be silent. You will do exactly as I say, or you will die here." Clara nodded, her eyes wide. She was clutching her heavy camera tripod in one hand and the ledger in the other. "Leave the legs," Tala commanded, yanking the tripod from her grasp and tossing it into the darkness of the hogan. "Take the box and the book. Nothing else." Tala pushed Clara into the deepest shadow, against the curved earthen wall, behind a stack of curing sheepskins that smelled of lanolin and smoke. "Do not breathe," she whispered. Then Tala moved back to the center of the hogan, picked up her own saddlebags, and slung them over her shoulder. She stood, not near the door, but in the middle of the room, a clear silhouette against the faint starlight from the smoke hole. She was waiting. She was claiming the space. The horses stopped, not a slow halt, but a sharp, practiced pull-up. Boot leather creaked. A man cleared his throat. "Tala Nez." The voice was deep, and it carried the easy authority of a man who was never questioned. It was not a question. It was a summons. Tala walked slowly, deliberately, to the doorway. She pushed the heavy blanket aside and stepped out into the night. The new moon offered no light. The world was black and silver, defined by starlight. 3 men were on horseback, their forms dark against the sky. A 4th man held a lantern, and the yellow light threw their shadows long and grotesque, making them dance against the low dunes. The man holding the lantern was Sheriff Vance Crowder. He was a big man, broad in the shoulders, with a thick neck that bulged over the collar of his coat. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but the lantern light caught the star pinned to his vest. It was a tarnished, greasy thing. A coiled lariat hung from his saddle horn, a thick, stiff rope that looked more like a noose than a tool. "Evening, Sheriff," Tala said. Her voice was perfectly calm, perfectly flat. She gave no ground. "Where is she?" Tala. Crowder did not bother with pleasantries. He kept his horse between her and the hogan, a casual, threatening barrier. "She who my aunt is at a birthing, you know this. Do not play games with me." Crowder's voice dropped, became the growl of a man holding back violence. "The white woman, the photographer. We tracked her this far." "A white woman?" Tala let a note of disdain enter her voice. "You know our law, Sheriff. No Bilagana stays here after dark without my aunt's word." "I have a warrant, girl," Crowder said, leaning forward. He was close enough now that she could smell the whiskey on his breath, a sour note under the clean scent of sage. He reached into his coat and produced a folded piece of paper, signed by Judge Harrow himself, for the arrest of one Clara Monroe, theft of company property. Aiding her is obstruction of justice. In the darkness of the hogan, Clara held her breath until her lungs burned. She heard every word. Judge Harrow, the man whose name was in the ledger, the man who had signed the warrants for the land seizures. The system was not just broken, it was a weapon. Tala looked at the paper, then back at Crowder's face. The lantern light made a skull of his features. This was it. This was Coyote Wash all over again. The piece of paper that made murder legal. The star that gave a killer the right to burn homes. Her hand ached, not for her knife, but for the rifle that was in her saddle scabbard, just 20 feet away on her pinto. But there were 3 of them, maybe more. "I have not seen her," Tala said. The lie was a stone in her mouth. Crowder laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Your aunt's fire is cold, Tala, but the ground here is scuffed, and I smell those fancy chemicals the picture takers use. You want we should search the hogan?" He did not wait for an answer. He swung his leg over the saddle. His boots hit the ground with a solid, heavy thud, the sound of law. "That is my aunt's home," Tala said, her voice dropping to a warning. "It is sacred. You will not enter. Sacred, Crowder sneered. He took a step toward her, the lantern light swinging. This whole cursed patch of red dirt is about to be sacred to the railroad. Girl, now step aside. He put a heavy hand on her shoulder to push her. Tala did not move. Her body, trained since childhood, became iron. Crowder pushed, and it was like pushing against the mesa itself. His smile faded. He was not used to being resisted. You are obstructing, he growled, his hand dropping to the butt of the pistol on his hip. And you are trespassing, Tala said. The other two men, simple deputies or hired guns, fanned out, their rifles held ready. They were nervous, their eyes darting into the blackness beyond the small pool of light. This was Dineland. They knew the stories. I am the law, Crowder said, his voice rising. You are Kincaid's law, Tala said. The words hung in the air. The challenge was made. Crowder's face went dark with fury. He unholstered his pistol, not pointing it, but holding it. A threat. You have got 3 seconds to move. Tala, before I arrest you, too. Tala's mind raced. She could not win this fight. Not here, not now. She would have to give up the woman. It was the only logical choice. Her aunt's home, her own life, for a stranger who had brought this trouble. But then the wind gusted, blowing the fine, cold ash from the fire pit across the ground between them. The gray dust settled on Crowder's boots. The past, the villages burned to ash by men just like him, holding pieces of paper. And this woman, this Clara, carried the one thing that could stop it from happening again. This woman had spoken her sacred name. Tala glanced back into the darkness of the hogan. She saw a faint movement. Clara was not just hiding, she was moving. That is enough, Sheriff, a new voice cut through the tension. A fourth man rode into the light. He was not dressed like the posse. He wore a clean duster and a city hat. He sat on a fine bay mare, and he looked at the scene with the bored impatience of a manager. He ignored Tala completely, his eyes on Crowder. We do not have time for this. The man said. He pulled a small, heavy leather pouch from his pocket and tossed it to Crowder. The sheriff caught it, his eyes gleaming as he heard the jingle of coin. That is a bonus. From Mr. Kincaid. He wants this handled quietly, and he wants his book back, now. Crowder's anger evaporated, replaced by a greedy smile. He hefted the pouch. You got it, Mr. Sloan. He looked back at Tala. Last chance, girl. Inside the hogan, Clara watched through a tiny slit in the sheepskins. She saw it all. The man in the duster, the bag of money, the sheriff's greedy, nodding face. This was it, the bribe, happening right in front of her. This was the living proof. Her hands, cold and shaking, found the simple wooden box of her camera. She had not left it. She had it with her. She quietly, expertly, pulled a fresh plate from its light-proof holder and slid it into the camera. Her other hand found the small tin of magnesium powder and the flash trigger. This was her weapon. It was clumsy. It was slow. But it was all she had. She raised the camera, bracing it against the earthen wall. She aimed it through the slit, at the group of men, at the sheriff holding the bag of money. Search the hogan. Crowder ordered his men. No, Tala said, as the deputies started to move. Clara opened the shutter. Then she squeezed the trigger. A sudden, brilliant, blinding white light erupted from the doorway of the hogan. It was brighter than the sun, a silent explosion that vaporized the night. The men, their eyes adjusted to the pitch black, cried out in pain and shock. The horses screamed, rearing, pulling at their reins. What in God's name? Crowder yelled, dropping the money and his pistol, his hands flying to his face. The man in the duster, Sloan, was thrown from his spooked horse. One of the deputies fired his rifle, a panic shot that went wide and high into the night sky. Clara clicked the shutter closed. She had it. Now, Tala's voice cut through the chaos. She grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her from the hogan. "Run!" Tala did not run for her horse. She ran for the rim of the mesa, pulling Clara with her. "My camera!" Clara gasped, trying to stop. "It is just a box," Tala yelled, yanking her forward. "Your life is not—" Behind them, the men were shouting, blinded and confused. "It was a gunshot! No, it was a bomb!" Tala whistled, a long, sharp, two-note call. Her pinto, trained and loyal, broke free from where he was tied and galloped away from the hogan. A perfect diversion. "There they are on the horse!" one of the men yelled. Tala and Clara scrambled over the rocks, away from the path, heading for a place the white men did not know. A narrow split in the rock, barely wide enough for a man to walk through. The Antelope Gate. They slid down a short embankment of loose scree, Clara tumbling, the heavy glass plate in her camera box miraculously unbroken. Tala hauled her to her feet. The entrance to the slot canyon was just ahead, a blacker shadow in the black. A shot rang out, and a bullet chipped the rock just above Clara's head. They dove into the canyon. They were safe, for a moment. The narrow walls of the Antelope Gate muffled the sounds of the posse. They could not be followed on horseback. Clara slumped against the cold sandstone, her lungs burning, her body shaking so hard she could barely stand. You left your horse," Clara panted. "He knows where to find me," Tala said. She was not even breathing hard. She was looking back the way they came, listening. "But you, what was that light?" Clara, her strength gone, slid to the canyon floor. She held up the heavy wooden box. "I am a photographer," she whispered, a strange, triumphant smile touching her cracked lips. "They think I just steal ledgers, but I take pictures, too." She patted the camera. "I got it, Tala. I got the picture. The agent, the money, the sheriff. I got it all." Tala stared at the woman, at her strange box. She had not been a liability. She had not been a victim. She had fought back, with light. Tala looked down the dark, twisting path of the canyon. This was not her fight, not an hour ago. But now she was an accomplice. She was a witness. She had saved a woman who held the proof. She had not meant to, but the choice had been made. The wind howled at the canyon's entrance, but it could not reach them here. "Come," Tala said, turning her back on the hogan and the life she had known. "We must go. The dawn is many hours away, and this path is not kind to strangers." She had become, against all her will, an escort. They walked for nearly 3 hours in the suffocating blackness. The Antelope Gate was a winding scar in the earth, so narrow that in places Clara had to turn her shoulders to squeeze through. Tala moved ahead of her, a shadow among shadows, her moccasins whispering over the sand-dusted stone. Clara, in her hard-heeled city boots, stumbled and slipped. The heavy camera box, which she refused to abandon, banged against her hip. The red ledger was tucked inside her woolen jacket, a hard, rectangular shield against her ribs. Clara could smell the pinto before she saw him. The animal scent of horsehide and warm breath cut through the cold mineral air of the canyon. They emerged from the slot canyon into a wide, shallow wash. The sky above was a vast bowl of cold stars, and waiting, as still as the boulders around him, was Tala's stallion. Tala gave another low whistle. The horse nickered softly and walked to her. Tala ran a hand down his neck, murmuring to him in Dine. She went straight to her saddle scabbard and pulled her rifle, checking the action in a single, fluid motion. The solid clack-click of the lever was the loudest sound in the night. It was, to Clara's ears, a sound of profound reassurance. "Get on," Tala said. Tala mounted the stallion in one move. Clara, clumsy with exhaustion and burdened by the camera, struggled to pull herself up behind the saddle. Tala grabbed the front of her jacket and hauled her up, setting her astride the horse's muscular rump. Hold on to me, Tala ordered. There was no kindness in it. It was a command for survival. Clara hesitated, then wrapped her arms around Tala's waist. The warrior's back was rigid, her body lean and hard as juniper wood. She smelled of the cedar smoke and cold wind. Tala kicked the pinto into a trot, not back toward the mesa, but deeper into the uncharted territory of the Dine. They rode until the stars began to fade, replaced by a thin, gray light in the east. The world resolved itself from black to shades of blue and purple. Clara was half asleep, her head slumped against Tala's back, when the dogs started barking. She jerked awake. They were in a wide, grassy clearing protected by low mesas. A large flock of sheep, hundreds of them, were stirring in a cedar post corral, their bleating a low, constant complaint against the coming morning. 2 hogans, larger than Tala's aunts, sat facing the dawn. Smoke rose from the center of both, promising warmth. A young Dine man emerged from one of the hogans. He was tall and moved with a restless energy. He was polishing a piece of silver, a small hammer in his other hand. He saw Tala and his face broke into a wide smile. Tala Nez, you are back early. His smile vanished when he saw Clara clinging to Tala's back. His eyes narrowed. He looked from Clara to the rifle Tala carried. You bring trouble. Shandin, hush, Tala said, sliding from the pinto. She spoke in Dine, fast and low. Clara, stiff and sore, slid off the horse, her legs buckling. She leaned against the stallion's warm flank, clutching her camera. The blanket of the main hogan was pushed aside. An old man stepped out. He was ancient, his face a beautiful map of wrinkles, his long gray hair tied in a traditional bun. He wore a simple velveteen shirt and turquoise earrings that brushed his shoulders. He did not look at Tala. He looked at Clara. His eyes were dark and clear, and they held no fear. They held only an immense, weary knowledge. This was Atsa. His name meant eagle. Shai Masani is safe, Tala said to him, in English now for Clara's sake, but her hogan is not. Crowder was there, with Kincaid's men. Atsa's gaze did not waver from Clara. She is the trouble. She is, Tala agreed, pulling her saddlebags from the horse. And she is also the proof. Let us go inside. The sun is coming, and they will be hunting. The hogan was warm. A fire in the center pit cracked and spat, sending shadows dancing on the curved walls. A woman with a kind, tired face handed Clara a tin mug of scalding hot coffee and a piece of fried bread, fresh and dripping with mutton grease. Clara ate, her hands shaking so hard she spilled coffee on her lap. She did not care. The warmth was life. Shandin came in, his youthful face tight with anger. He sat on a stack of blankets, the silver dragonfly he was working on forgotten in his hand. Atsa sat opposite Clara, his hands resting on his knees. Tala stood by the door, a sentinel. Tell him, Tala said to Clara. Clara's voice was hoarse. She told them everything. She told them about Ephraim Kincaid's plan, the railroad, the mine. She told them about the red ledger in her coat. She told them about the bribes, the maps, the schedules for removal. Shandin hit his fist against his leg. We knew it. We knew the Bilagana and Ash Hollow were snakes. We should ride there. We should. We should be quiet, boy, Atsa said, his voice soft but carrying the weight of stone. He silenced Shandin with a look. He turned his eagle gaze back to Clara. You have brought a white man's storm to our home, Atsa said. This Kincaid is a coyote. He has tasted blood. He will not stop. That is why we cannot stop, Clara insisted. Finding her strength, the food and warmth were clearing her head. This is not a fight you can win with rifles. I have seen what Kincaid does. He uses the law. He uses judges. He will send the soldiers. He will say you are hostiles. We are not hostiles, Tala said, her voice a low growl. We are on our own land. It does not matter. Clara stood up, her voice ringing with the passion that had driven her this far. He has the paper. He has the law. You must fight him with his own weapons. This book. She slapped her chest. This is the weapon. We must take it to Santa Fe. Not to the judges he owns, to the federal marshal, to the newspapers. We must put his crimes in the light for everyone to see. Atsa considered this. Santa Fe, that is a long walk. And Crowder will be on every road. He will be at every crossing. He will hunt you. I know, Clara said. You do not know, Tala said, her voice cutting. You do not know what he is, what they are. A heavy silence filled the hogan. Clara looked at the two men, then at Tala. She had to give them the final piece, the piece that would either bind them to her or make them cast her out forever. You are right, Clara said quietly, her body slumping. I do not, but I am trying to learn. I am trying to pay a debt. She looked at Tala, her eyes pleading for understanding. When you found me, in your aunt's hogan, I spoke your name, your sacred name. You asked how I knew it. Tala's face was stone. I was in Santa Fe, researching the old territorial records. I found the reports from the army about Coyote Wash. Shandian looked down. Atsa closed his eyes. There were photographs, Clara continued, her voice thick with a shame that was not her own. And journals. They were archived. I read them all, because I had to. I was looking for his name, and I found it. Whose name? Shandian whispered. Clara took a deep breath. My father's, his name is Captain Elias Monroe. He commanded the unit stationed at Red Mesa. He was there. He wrote the report. Tala moved. She crossed the hogan in 2 strides and stood over Clara. Her face was a mask of cold fury. Her hand was on her knife. Clara did not flinch. She had come too far to be afraid now. She looked up at the warrior. He called it a necessary removal for the progress of the territory, Clara said, tears welling in her eyes, hot and angry. He justified the fire. He justified the graves. I found this ledger, Kincaid's book, while I was looking for proof of my father's crimes. Kincaid is just finishing the work my father started. This book, this is my penance. This is my apology. I will not let his shadow fall on you again. I will stop it, or I will die trying. Tala's hand rested on the knife hilt. The air in the hogan was so thick it was hard to breathe. The story of her brother's death, of the screams in the wash, was a living thing between them. Atsa rose slowly. He walked to Tala and placed a hand on her arm. She did not relax, but she did not draw the blade. Naashja iastza, Atsa said, using Tala's name, Spider-Woman. Look at her. Tala's eyes, black with memory, focused on Clara. A child does not carry the father's debt, Atsa said softly, but she can choose to pay it. This woman has chosen. She walks a hard path, a path of truth. He looked at Clara. Your father's shadow is long, but you have chosen to walk into the light. Tala stepped back, her hand falling away from her knife. She turned away from Clara, the conflict raging inside her. To help the daughter of her people's butcher, it felt like a betrayal. But to let Kincaid win, that was a greater one. The roads are watched, Tala said, her voice rough. Yes, Atsa said, a small, rare smile touching his lips. The roads are watched, but we do not use the roads. He walked to a large, carved wooden chest, dark with age. He lifted the lid and removed a rolled piece of hide. It was not a paper map. It was an old deerskin, smoked and cured, marked with lines of charcoal and red ochre. He unrolled it on the blanket. The Bilagana maps show the land, Atsa said, his finger tracing a line. Our maps show the water. This is the old way, before the long walk, before the soldiers. His fingers stopped at a dark smudge on the map. Black Canyon. The white men avoid it. They say it is cursed. They say it is dry. They are wrong. There is water there, deep in the stone, a spring that never fails. This map shows the trail to it. It is a hard path, a warrior's path, but it will take you north of Crowder. It will hide you. The decision was made. The air in the hogan cleared. Tala looked at the map, then at Atsa. She nodded. I will take her. Shandin, his anger replaced by a practical fire, stood. Then you will not go empty-handed. He ran outside to his small, open-air workshop. The sound of hammering, sharp and rhythmic, rang out in the new morning. He returned a few minutes later, holding a silver pendant. It was a perfect, abstract circle, and in the center, he had hammered the shape of a spider. For her, he said, handing it to Tala. He would not give it to Clara directly. The spider, to protect the weaver, and to remind her who guides her. Tala took the pendant. The silver was still warm from the forge. She walked to Clara and held it out. Clara looked at the symbol, then at Tala, understanding the connection. She held out her hand, and Tala dropped the pendant into her palm. Clara looped the leather thong around her neck, tucking the silver underneath her shirt. It lay against her skin, a small, warm promise. You must go now, Atsa said. He gave them a heavy satchel filled with dried meat, cornmeal, and 2 full water skins. Shandian has 2 fresh horses for you. They are fast, and they know the high country. Clara shouldered her camera. Tala took the satchel and her rifle. They walked out of the hogan into the full light of dawn. The sheep were moving out to pasture, their bells a gentle, chiming music. The smell of silver dust and coffee hung in the air. It was a world of peace, a world they were leaving behind to save. They mounted the horses. Clara looked back at Atsa. He raised one hand, his face calm and certain. Walk in beauty, he said. Tala looked forward, toward the dark slit of Black Canyon in the distance. She kicked her horse, and they rode out. 2 women against a railroad, carrying a book of sins and a single, fragile photograph of the truth. The wheels of fate had been set, and there was no turning back. Black Canyon was not a path, it was a test. The walls were black volcanic rock, rising sheer for what looked like 1,000 feet. The sky was a pale, narrow river of blue far above. Atsa's map had been true. There was a trail, but it was a phantom. It existed only as a series of shallow depressions in the stone, a path worn by generations of Dain moving in secret, a path invisible to anyone who did not know how to look for it. Tala led, her fresh horse picking its way with care. She had her rifle out, resting across the front of her saddle. She was not just guiding, she was scanning. Her eyes never stopped moving, reading the wind, the breaks in the rock, the shadows that seemed too deep. This canyon, she knew, was a perfect place for an ambush. It felt like a trap. It felt too much like Coyote Wash. Clara followed, her misery complete. Her city clothes were a hindrance, her city boots a disaster. They slipped on the smooth stone, and the sound of her horse skittering echoed in the profound silence. The camera box, strapped to her back with a new leather thong, felt like it weighed 100 pounds. She tried to copy Tala, to ride where she rode, to make her horse move with the same ghost-like silence. But she was a photographer, not a warrior. She was clumsy, she was loud. Tala stopped, raising a hand. She did not turn. She sat, listening. Clara froze, holding her breath. She could hear nothing but the faint sigh of the wind in the upper reaches of the canyon. You ride like a man with tin cans tied to his boots, Tala said, her voice low. Not turning. This rock carries sound. We are announcing ourselves to every living thing for 5 miles. I am sorry, Clara whispered, her face hot with shame. My horse, I am not used to this. Then get used to it, Tala said, or you will get us both killed. Let the horse feel the rock. Do not fight him. Breathe and be quiet. Clara nodded. Though Tala could not see her, she tried to relax, to let her body move with the horse. She was learning. Every muscle in her body ached, but she was learning. The sky, which had been a clear, cold blue, began to change. The wind picked up, funneling down the canyon as if it were a chimney. It started as a low whistle, then grew to a mournful, hollow roar. High above, Clara saw a plume of yellow dust moving against the blue. It looked like a dirty cloud, moving faster than any cloud she had ever seen. Tala saw it too. Her head snapped up. "Sandstorm," she said, her voice tight. She spun her horse. "Now. We must find cover. Now." The word was barely out of her mouth when the storm hit them. It was not just wind. It was a solid wall of sand and alkali dust, moving at the speed of a train. It blasted them. A billion tiny, stinging needles. Clara cried out, her eyes blinded, her lungs filling with the choking grit. She could not see. She could not breathe. Tala was beside her, a shadow in the screaming yellow. She grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her from the horse. This way, she yelled over the roar. She dragged Clara toward a high bank of fallen boulders, a place where the cliff had slumped centuries ago. They stumbled, fell, and crawled into the small, dark space behind the largest rock. The horses, turning their backs to the wind, stood huddled, their heads low. The world dissolved. There was nothing but the sound, a high-pitched shriek that seemed to come from inside her skull. The wind tried to pull them from their shelter. The sand scoured the rock, filling the air. Clara was coughing, gasping. Tala watched her face grim. She pulled the leather thong from her own hair, letting the black curtain fall around her shoulders. She held the thong out to Clara. "Tie this around your face. Cover your mouth. Your nose." Clara, her fingers numb and clumsy, fumbled with it. Tala, with a sigh of impatience, took it from her and tied it herself, pulling the leather tight, fashioning a crude but effective mask. Clara breathed through it. The air was still thick, but it was breathable. It tasted of leather and Tala's skin. Tala tore a strip from her own saddle blanket and tied it around her own face. They huddled together, two small figures against the rage of the desert. Tala pressed her back against the stone, her rifle across her lap. The screaming of the wind, the feeling of being trapped in a narrow place, the dust filling her throat. Her heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drum of panic. This was how it had felt. The soldiers above, on the rim, the smoke so thick, the screams. Her brother, his hand slipping from hers. She squeezed her eyes shut. "No, I am not that girl. This is not that wash." She opened them. She saw Clara, her eyes wide with terror over the leather mask. She was responsible for this woman. This thought was an anchor. It was not memory. It was duty. She forced the panic down, turning it into cold, sharp vigilance. The storm raged for 2 hours. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it eased. The sound died down to a whistle. The air was still thick, a yellow fog, but the wind had lost its violence. And in the new, muffled silence, Tala heard it. A sound that did not belong. The scrape of a boot on stone, high above them. Tala put one hand on Clara's arm, a silent command for stillness. She looked up, past their rock shelter, toward the canyon rim. A man was standing there, a silhouette in the yellow fog. He was not a deputy. He was not a soldier. He was lean, patient. He held a rifle with a long telescopic sight. He was looking down, not at them, but at their horses. Clara saw him. Is that one of Crowder's?" "No," Tala said, her voice a low, cold whisper. "That is Mac Harlan. They call him Scar." Clara did not know the name, but she heard the recognition in Tala's voice. This was worse than Crowder. Harlan raised his rifle. He was not aiming at them. He was aiming at Clara's horse. The rifle cracked, the sound flattened sharp. Clara's horse screamed, a high, terrible sound, and collapsed, its legs folding. Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "He is not letting us ride out," Tala said, her voice devoid of emotion. She was all warrior now. "He is pinning us." Harlan levered another round into the chamber. He was taking his time. He knew they were trapped. "He is going to shoot my horse, too," Tala said. "Then he will wait, or he will come down." "What do we do?" Clara's voice was shaking. "Your box," Tala said, her eyes fixed on the man on the rim. "The light, the white fire. Can you make it?" Clara looked at her camera. Still strapped to her back. "Yes, I have 2 flash pans left, but it is not a weapon." "It is today," Tala said. "Get it ready. Can you aim it up there?" Clara's mind raced. I think so. I do not have the tripod. I will have to hold it. It will not be steady." "It does not need to be steady. It just needs to be bright." Tala pulled her own horse, the Pinto, closer into the shelter. "He is waiting. He wants to see us move." Clara fumbled in her satchel, her hands shaking. She pulled out the camera, the flash mechanism, and a small tin of magnesium powder. She poured the powder into the pan. "I am ready." "He is on the rim," Tala said. "He is about 200 yards away. He is waiting for me to move, to give him a target." She looked at Clara. "When I move, he will shoot. When he shoots, you make the fire. Aim it at his face. Do you understand?" Clara nodded, her face pale. "Do not be late," Tala said. Tala took a deep breath. Then she burst from behind the rock, pulling her Pinto with her, running not away but parallel to the cliff. "Hi-yah!" she screamed, a war cry. The rifle on the rim cracked. The bullet kicked up dust right where Tala had been a second before. "Now," Tala yelled. Clara stepped out from the cover. She raised the camera high, holding it in both hands like a weapon. She opened the shutter and squeezed the flash trigger. A brilliant, terrible, silent explosion of white light lit the canyon. It was brighter than the sun, a harsh, chemical fire that vaporized the yellow fog, bleaching the black rock white. A scream of pure rage and pain echoed from the rim. "My eyes, I am blind." Another shot boomed, wild, the bullet ricocheting off the canyon wall far to their left. Clara stumbled back, her hands automatically clicking the shutter closed. The image of the man, his face contorted, his rifle firing wild, was burned into her vision. "Run!" Tala yelled. She had abandoned her horse. She grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her. "There is a rock slide, a path. Down, not up, down." They scrambled down a narrow chute of loose rock, sliding and falling, as Harlan cursed and fired blindly into the canyon. The sound of his bullets striking stone echoed around them. The storm, as if summoned by the chaos, swelled again. The wind roared back, a curtain of yellow dust descending, covering their escape. They found a shallow cave, a hollow in the rock at the canyon floor, and collapsed inside, coughing, their hearts hammering. They were safe, for now. Clara was shaking, but not just from fear. Her mind was working. "I saw him," she panted, holding the camera to her chest. "In the light. Just for a second. I saw him perfectly." "He is blind," Tala said, peering out into the swirling sand. "For a few minutes, but he will come. He knows this canyon." "No, listen," Clara said, grabbing Tala's arm. Her eyes were bright with a fierce, terrible discovery. "I saw his horse. It was tied behind him. And the saddle?" "What about the saddle?" "It had a brand. On the fender. A capital K intertwined with a railroad spike. I have seen it before. In the ledger. It is Kincaid's personal mark. The one he uses for his private company. The one that handles the bribes. The man Sloan, who paid Crowder, he had a briefcase with the same mark." Tala turned to look at her. The implications settled on them, heavy as the rock. "This is not a bounty hunter," Clara whispered, her voice full of awe and terror. "This is not just Sheriff Crowder. Kincaid sent his personal executioner. He knows what we have, and he sent the man who burns the evidence." Tala looked at the strange wooden box in Clara's hands. This woman had not just saved their lives with her light. She had found more proof. She had connected the killer on the rim directly to Ephraim Kincaid. Tala reached out and took the water skin from her belt. She offered it to Clara. The trust between them had changed. It was no longer just about survival. It was about the mission. Rest, Tala said. We let the storm cover our tracks. Then we move. He is one man, we are two. And he is blind. We have the advantage. The sandstorm did not pass. It changed. The yellow grit that had blinded them turned to a fine, cold silt, and then the silt turned to water. The wind did not die. It simply carried a new weapon. A high desert rain began to fall, hard and freezing, turning the canyon floor into a treacherous soup of mud and alkali. In the shallow cave, Clara shivered, her teeth chattering. The leather mask Tala had given her was soaked. "He is still up there," Tala said, her voice a low vibration. She had been staring into the gray, swirling rain for an hour. "Harlan, he is like a wolf. He will not leave the scent of blood." "He is one man," Clara said, her voice shaking. "We are two." "He is one man who knows this land," Tala corrected. "And we are on foot. He has a horse. He has a rifle with a spyglass. The advantage is his." "So we wait here, we freeze." Clara's woolen suit was soaked through, heavy as lead. Tala looked at her. The woman's lips were turning blue. The cold was a faster killer than Harlan. "No, we move. The rain will cover our sound. This storm is a gift, if we use it." "Where he is waiting for us. He is waiting for us to go down the canyon, or back up it. He is not waiting for us to climb." Tala pointed to a fissure in the rock wall behind them, a place where a rock slide had created a steep, narrow path of broken scree. "That is a goat trail. It will take us to the rim." "He is on the rim," Clara argued. "He is on the north rim," Tala said. "We are going south." It was not a climb. It was a scramble, a desperate vertical fight. Tala moved like a spider, her moccasins finding holds that Clara could not see. Clara, burdened by the camera box strapped to her back, slipped and fell, her hands cut and bleeding on the sharp volcanic rock. Twice, Tala had to stop, reach down, and haul her up by the front of her jacket. Clara's breath was a raw sob in her throat, a mix of fear and exertion. They reached the top, pulling themselves over the ledge just as the rain turned violent. It was no longer just water. It was ice. Small, hard pellets of hail began to fall, striking their faces, rattling against the stones. The sky was a low, bruised purple. "This way," Tala commanded, pulling Clara to her feet. "Run!" They ran, half blinded by the hail, across the open mesa. There was no cover, just shattered rock and skeletal juniper trees. Every step was agony. Clara was numb. She was moving, but she could no longer feel her feet. "I cannot," she gasped, stumbling. "I cannot go on." "Yes, you can," Tala said, pulling her upright, her grip like iron. "Look." Through the gray sheet of ice, Clara saw it. A shape, a low, sagging roof line, a ghost of a building. It was an old, abandoned structure, its walls a mix of rotting timber and slumped adobe. "What is it?" Clara breathed. "A Pony Express station," Tala said, "from before the war. It is a place to be dry." They half fell through the doorway, which was missing its door. The place was a ruin. The main room was small, its floor littered with dried animal droppings and old leaves. A rusted pot-bellied stove stood in one corner, its pipe a jagged hole in the roof. But that roof, made of corrugated tin, was mostly whole. The hail hammered against it, a deafening, frantic drum roll. It was the sound of 1,000 men beating on the sky. Tala did not rest. She dropped the heavy satchel Atsa had given them, the one thing she had managed to grab from her horse before she fled and went to work. She found an old, broken table and, with a single powerful kick, shattered its legs for firewood. She took dry brush from a massive pack rat nest in the corner. From a pouch at her belt, she took her flint and steel. Clara stood, watching, shaking so violently she could barely stand. She was covered in mud, her hair plastered to her skull, her lips a pale, bluish gray. In moments, Tala had a small, smoky fire catching in the belly of the rusted stove. The wood was damp, but it burned. A weak, desperate warmth began to fill the small room. The air smelled of wet wood, rat droppings, and rust. Tala turned to Clara. She did not ask. She commanded, "Your clothes. Take them off. Now!" Clara stared at her, her mind slow, frozen. "What?" "The wet wool will steal your heart. It will kill you." Tala stepped forward. Her fingers, quick and impersonal, undid the buttons of Clara's heavy jacket. "Take it off." Clara, beyond modesty, beyond thought, obeyed. She let the heavy soaked jacket fall to the floor. Her skirt followed. She was left standing in her thin cotton chemise and underdrawers, which were just as wet. She wrapped her arms around herself, but the shaking would not stop. Tala took the wet garments and spread them on the broken back of a chair, as close to the stove as she dared. Then she looked back at Clara, a shivering, pale figure in the dim light. Tala opened her satchel. She pulled out her own spare clothing. Not a dress. It was a shirt, a deep blue velveteen shirt, the kind Diney women wore. Fastened with silver buttons, it was dry, it was warm. "Here," Tala said, holding it out. "Put this on." Clara's hands were too numb to work. With a low sound of frustration, Tala pushed her hands away. "Lift your arms." Clara did. Tala pulled the wet chemise up over Clara's head, leaving her naked for a brief, cold second. Then she dropped the warm, heavy velveteen shirt over her. The fabric was soft, clean. It smelled of cedar. It was so large on Clara that it fell to her knees, a makeshift dress. Tala then pushed her down onto a low stool near the fire. She unlaced Clara's ruined city boots and pulled them from her feet. Clara's toes were white and waxy. Tala rubbed them, hard and painfully, until the blood returned in a red, stinging flush. Finally, Tala wrapped Clara's legs in one of the thick blankets from the pack. Clara sat, enveloped in Tala's shirt, wrapped in her blanket, her feet stinging, the warmth of the small fire slowly seeping into her bones. The violent shaking subsided, leaving her utterly, profoundly exhausted. Tala sat on the other side of the fire, her rifle across her knees. She was watching the doorway. The hail on the roof was the only sound. The silence between them stretched, but it was no longer the empty silence of suspicion. It was a shared, breathing space. The distance had dissolved. Clara looked at Tala. The warrior's face was hard in the firelight, her eyes on the door, but her gesture, it had been an act of pure, blunt care. "I have something," Clara said, her voice still rough. "Something I need to show you." Tala's gaze shifted to her. Clara reached for her leather satchel. It, too, was soaked, but she had protected it as best she could. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were her precious glass plates. The one of Crowder taking the bribe, the one of Harlan, blinded by the flash, and another one, an older plate. She pulled it out. It was not a perfect square. The glass was cracked, and the emulsion at the corners was dark, as if it had been licked by fire. "I found this in the archives in Santa Fe," Clara said, her voice low. "In my father's locked files. I think he tried to burn it, but he could not." She held it out. Tala put down her rifle. She took the plate. It was heavy, a cold, dark mirror. She held it up, angling it to catch the weak light from the stove. The image resolved. A group of men in dark blue uniforms, soldiers. They were posing, some of them smiling, one holding a bottle. They stood in front of a structure that was engulfed in flames. A hogan. In the background, unmistakable, was the sharp, jagged silhouette of Red Mesa. Tala's breath stopped. "That is Coyote Wash," Clara whispered. "Is it not?" Tala did not answer. Her hand was shaking. Just once, a violent tremor. She recognized the shape of the cliffs. She recognized the burning structure. It was her grandfather's hogan. "The man in the center," Clara said, her voice thick with a shame that choked her. "The one with the saber. smiling. "That is Captain Elias Monroe, my father." Tala stared at the face of the man who had ordered the fire, the man who had destroyed her world, who had killed her brother. This was the Bilagana who had signed the report, the one who had called her people obstacles. And this woman, sitting here, wearing her shirt, was his daughter. The bloodline was poison. Clara watched her. She saw the hatred in Tala's eyes, the cold, pure blackness. This was it, the final test. I am so sorry," Clara whispered, the tears finally coming, hot and silent. "I am so sorry for what he did." Tala looked away from the plate, from the face of the ghost. She looked at Clara. She saw the woman's face, wet with tears, pale with exhaustion, marked by a profound, inherited guilt. She saw the woman who had, just hours ago, stepped out from cover and faced a killer's rifle, armed only with a box of light. She saw the woman who had not flinched from telling her the truth. Tala's hand, the one holding the plate, slowly uncurled. The rage did not vanish, but it settled. It made room for something else. "This is his sin," Tala said, her voice rough. She handed the plate back to Clara. "Not yours. You carry his name, but you do not carry his heart." Clara took the plate, clutching it to her chest, her shoulders shaking with a silent sob of release. Tala turned back to the fire. She added the last piece of the broken table. The hail on the roof had quieted, replaced by a steady, drumming rain. The night had fully fallen. The fire began to die, sinking to red embers. The cold of the room pressed in again. There was only one bedroll. Tala stood and unrolled it, spreading the thick sheepskins and blankets on the floor, in the warmest part of the room, near the dying stove. Clara stood up, her bare feet silent on the cold dirt floor. She was still wearing only the long, blue velveteen shirt. She looked small, vulnerable, in the dim, red glow of the embers. She looked at Tala. A deep, sudden blush rose from her neck, coloring her face. "Where do I sleep tonight?" she asked. The question was quiet, but it filled the entire room. It was not about propriety. It was about safety, about closeness. It was about two women, alone in the world, with killers outside and ghosts inside. Tala looked at her. She saw the pale skin of her legs below the hem of the shirt. She saw the soft curve of her throat in the open collar. She saw the trust in her eyes. There was a pull, a warmth, that had nothing to do with the fire. Tala held her gaze for a long moment. Then she turned away. She gestured to the bedroll she had just prepared. "You sleep there," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You are sick from the cold. You need the warmth. You must rest." Clara hesitated. "And you? Where will you sleep?" Tala picked up her rifle. She walked to the empty doorway and sat, leaning her back against the frame. She pulled the last, thin blanket from the satchel and wrapped it around her own shoulders. She could see the rain falling in the darkness. "I will watch," Tala said. "The storm is passing. Harlan is a patient man, and the dawn is many hours away." Clara said nothing. She slipped into the bedroll. It was warm, and it smelled of cedar and of Tala. She turned on her side, facing the warrior who sat silhouetted against the dark, rainy night. The fear was gone. The guilt was still there, but it was no longer a wall. It was a bridge. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in a week, she slept. The journey from the abandoned station to Ash Hollow took 2 days, and they were 2 days of hell. They were on foot, with one rifle, a single blanket, and a small satchel of cornmeal. Harlan was behind them. They knew it. Tala did not need to see him. She could feel him, a cold presence on their trail, like a shadow that had detached itself from its owner. They walked only in the gray hours of dusk and pre-dawn, hiding in rock crevices during the bright, clear day that followed the storm. The high desert was washed clean, every line sharp, every color vivid. It was beautiful, and it was empty. It offered no cover. Tala led them on paths of sheer rock, avoiding sand or dirt that would hold a footprint. She was teaching Clara as they went. "Step on the stone," she would murmur. "Do not break the brush. Do not leave a sign you were alive." Clara learned. Her body was a single, coherent ache, but her mind was sharp. The fear and guilt that had frozen her were gone, burned away by the hailstorm and the fire of Tala's trust. She was no longer just carrying evidence. She was a participant in a war. She watched Tala's hands, the way she tested the wind, the way she read the smallest sign, a turned pebble, a broken piece of juniper, and understood it as a sentence. On the morning of the third day, they saw it, Ash Hollow. It was not a town. It was a scar, a collection of raw timber buildings and muddy tents huddled in a deep, treeless valley. A constant plume of black smoke rose from the mine smelter, staining the clean air. "Kincaid's town," Clara whispered. "It smells of sulfur and greed," Tala said. She pulled the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders, hiding her face, her hair, her identity. In the wild, she was a warrior. Here, she was just an Indian, a target. "We have to go in," Clara said, adjusting the heavy camera box on her back. Her woolen suit, though dry, was stiff with mud and torn. "My contact is here." "Your contact," Tala said, her voice flat. "The one you trust." "The one I wired before I ran," Clara said. "From the federal office in Santa Fe." "I told him I had proof of corporate fraud. I set a meeting. He is the only one who can get us out. He is the only one the law will listen to." "The law?" Tala said, the word tasting like ash. "Like Sheriff Crowder." "No," Clara said, her voice hard with a desperate hope. "This is a United States District Judge. He is not for sale. He cannot be." Tala looked at the town, then at Clara. "You trust a man in a black robe. I trust the earth. We will see which one is telling the truth." They entered Ash Hollow at noon. When the streets were crowded, miners, slick with mud, moved between the assay office and the saloons. Painted women watched from the upper windows of the largest hotel. Freight wagons, their wheels sinking deep, choked the main street. Clara walked with a confidence she did not feel, her head high. Tala walked beside her, a shadow. She kept her hand on the knife at her belt. Every man who looked at her, his eyes lingered, filled with a casual contempt that made her skin crawl. The meeting place was the back room of the town's loudest saloon. The Devil's Prospect. The irony was not lost on Clara. They pushed through the bat-wing doors. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale beer, unwashed bodies, and the sharp, metallic tang of the piano. The man playing it was hitting the keys with more enthusiasm than skill, the tune lost in a jangle of out-of-tune notes. Clara approached the barkeep, a heavy man with a stained apron. "We are here to see Judge Harrow. He is expecting me." The barkeep's eyes slid over her, then lingered on Tala. "Harrow, he is using the private room. Back there." He nodded toward a dark door at the end of the bar. "Do not take all day." The room was small, windowless, and lit by a single, oily kerosene lamp that smoked, filling the air with a faint, greasy smell. A round table and 3 chairs were the only furniture. The laughter and piano from the bar bled through the thin walls. They waited for 10 minutes. Tala did not sit. She stood against the wall, near the door, her eyes adjusting to the gloom. The door opened. The man who entered was not what Clara expected. He was not old or stern. He was perhaps 40, handsome, with a well-trimmed beard and a clean suit. He smelled of bay rum and expensive cigars. He smiled, a wide, neutral, professional smile. He was the image of civilized authority. "Miss Monroe," he said, his voice smooth as polished wood. "I am Judge Silas Harrow. I am so glad you made it here safely. I received your telegram. A harrowing ordeal, I imagine." Clara's relief was so profound she almost sagged. "Judge, thank God. Yes, it was." "And this is—" Harrow's smile did not waver, but his eyes, when they turned to Tala, became flat, calculating. He dismissed her as the help. "This is Tala Nez," Clara said firmly. "She is my partner. She saved my life." "Of course," Harrow said, his smile returning, though it did not reach his eyes. "Please, sit." Clara sat. Tala did not move from the wall. "You said you have evidence," Harrow said, leaning forward. "All business. Proof of Mr. Kincaid's activities." "I have it," Clara said. She reached for her satchel. "It is all here. A ledger, his private book. It lists everything. The bribes, the land fraud, the schedules for removing the dine from Red Mesa." "And the names?" Harrow asked, his voice sharp. "Does it list the names?" "Yes," Clara said. "It names the land agents. It names Sheriff Crowder. It names you. Judge." She said it. The words hung in the smoky air. The piano in the next room seemed to stumble, then found its rhythm again. Harrow's smile did not falter. He chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Miss Monroe, of course my name is in it. I am the district judge. I approve the land grants. Kincaid, like any businessman, must file his paperwork with my office. That is just procedure. He is trying to frame me, to make it look like I am complicit." His performance was perfect. He was calm, reasonable, outraged on her behalf. Tala watched his hands. They were soft. They had never held a tool or a rein. They were the hands of a man who signed papers. "This is a dangerous game, Miss Monroe," Harrow continued. "Kincaid is a powerful man. This ledger," he held out his hand. "It is the only thing that can stop him. It must be placed in federal custody immediately. Give it to me. I will see it gets to the marshal in Santa Fe, and I will place you both under my personal, armed protection." Clara looked at him. This was the moment. The system, the black robe, the man she was supposed to trust. Tala spoke, her voice low and rough, cutting through the judge's smooth tones. "His boots are too clean for this town." Harrow turned. Startled, he had forgotten her. "I beg your pardon." "Your boots," Tala said, nodding at his polished black shoes. "There is no mud on them. You did not walk here. You came from the hotel, and you did not touch the street." Harrow's eyes narrowed. "I fail to see." "It means you are Kincaid's guest," Tala said. "At the Grand Hotel, the one he owns, the one with the clean boardwalk from its door to this one." A flash of genuine anger crossed Harrow's face before he masked it. "This is absurd. Miss Monroe, your friend, is paranoid. We are wasting time. Mac Harlan is scouring this territory for you. Give me the book." Clara looked at Tala, then back at the judge. She made her decision. "You are right," Clara said to Harrow. "We are in danger. We need your help." She unstrapped her satchel and pulled out the thick, leather-bound book, the Red Ledger. She placed it on the table between them. Harrow's eyes lit, a flash of pure, greedy triumph. He reached for it, his smooth hands covering the worn leather. "Excellent. You have done the right thing, Miss Monroe. A brave, brave thing." He opened his own briefcase. It was full of neat, tied bundles of documents. "I will place this in my case. It will be sealed." He pulled the ledger toward him. "First, I need you to sign a deposition, a statement of how you came by this." He pushed a piece of paper and a pen toward her. As Clara bent to read the document, Harrow's hands moved, quick as a card sharp. He lifted the ledger. He had another one, identical in size and shape, in his briefcase, with a smooth, practiced motion. He dropped Clara's book into the bag and placed the decoy on the table in its place. It took less than 2 seconds. Tala saw it. Her hand tensed on her knife. Harrow closed his briefcase. The lock snapped shut with a decisive, final click. "Now," he said, pushing a stick of red wax into the lamp's chimney. He dripped a pool of it onto a fresh envelope. This is the writ for your protection." He pressed his signet ring into the hot wax. The seal was an eagle, red like blood. "It is done," he said, his smile all warmth again. "I will have my men escort you. We have a safe room prepared at the hotel." Clara finished signing the paper. "Thank you. Judge, I feel safer already." "My pleasure, Miss Monroe. We all must do our part for justice." He stood, gesturing to a second door in the back of the room. "We will go this way. The alley is more private. The back door, the escape route for a two-faced man." Tala moved first, pulling the door open, checking the darkness. The alley was empty, save for stacks of barrels and refuse. It smelled of sour beer. Harrow followed, holding his briefcase. Clara came last. They stood in the dark, narrow space. The piano music was muffled here. "My deputies will be here momentarily," Harrow said. "Judge," Clara said, her voice clear and cold. He turned. "Yes, my dear." "The name," Clara said. "The one in the ledger, your name. It was not next to a filing fee. It was next to a number. $50,000. Harrow's smile vanished. His face went blank. "I do not know what you are talking about." "You do," Clara said. "You were the trap. I knew it before I even got to town. I have known for 2 days." Harrow's hand went inside his coat. Tala was faster. Her knife was at his throat, the point dimpling the soft skin under his chin. "Do not," she whispered. Harrow froze, his eyes wide with shock. "The book you have," Clara said. "It is a fake. It is my travel journal, blank pages." Tala looked at her, stunned. The swap. "What?" Harrow choked out. "In the station," Clara said, her voice ringing with cold, hard strategy. "While you were hunting us, Judge, I was working. I made a copy. You were so eager to see the cover, you never bothered to check the pages." Harrow's composure broke. "He was a rat, trapped." "Then where," he hissed, "is the real one?" Clara tapped the heavy camera box on her back. "A lens is just a hollow tube. Judge, lots of room inside for rolled-up paper. I cut the pages out, the maps, the signatures. Your signature. It is all here." Tala looked at Clara, and for the first time, she smiled. A fierce, proud smile. This woman was not a Bilagana. She was a warrior. They were 2 blades of a single knife. You... Harrow was sputtering, his mind racing. "We are leaving," Clara said. "You are going to walk us to the train station. You are going to be our shield." "Or what?" Harrow sneered, his fear turning to bluster. "You will kill me, an Indian girl with a knife." "No," Tala said, her voice quiet. "She will not." A new voice came from the end of the alley. "But I will." Sheriff Vance Crowder stepped out of the shadows, his shotgun leveled at them. 2 deputies fanned out behind him. "Drop the knife, girl," Crowder growled. "The party is over." Harrow let out a long, relieved breath. He straightened his collar, a smug smile returning to his face. "You see, Miss Monroe, the law always wins." Tala's knife fell from her hand, striking the muddy alley floor with a dull thud. "Clever," Sheriff Crowder sneered. Stepping into the dim light from the saloon, the twin barrels of his shotgun were black, steady, and aimed at Tala's chest. "You are a real clever pair." Judge Silas Harrow let out a long, shaky breath. He straightened his suit jacket, his composure flooding back, his face hardening into a mask of smug authority. "Sheriff, thank you. They were just, resisting arrest. This one," he pointed at Tala, "assaulted me." "She did she?" Crowder's eyes, small and cold, never left Tala. "Get the camera, boys, and the knife." One of the deputies moved forward, kicking Tala's knife away and grabbing the heavy camera box from Clara's back. He fumbled with the straps, his hands rough. "Be careful with that," Clara snapped, her voice sharp. The deputy just laughed and ripped it from her, handing it to Crowder. "And the briefcase, Sheriff," Harrow added, pointing to his own bag on the ground. "It contains the, evidence she tried to foist on me, her so-called journal." "Get it all," Crowder ordered. "We are not leaving anything." He gestured with the shotgun. "Now, ladies, we are going for a little walk. Mr. Kincaid is very eager to meet you. He is celebrating our success." They were marched out of the alley, not toward the jail, but toward the train yard at the edge of the hollow. A single, long train sat on the tracks, steam hissing from its engine. It was a freight train, mostly flatbeds and boxcars, but at the very end was a car that did not belong. It was a private car, painted a deep, lustrous black, with polished brass railings and curtained windows. "All aboard," Crowder said, prodding Tala in the back with a shotgun. They were forced up the steps and into the car. The change was dizzying. After days of cold rock and wet mud, the car was a palace of warm, dry air, thick carpets, and red velvet. It smelled of brandy and cigar smoke. 3 men were seated at a mahogany table. One was Sloan, the agent from the Hogan. One was Judge Harrow, who had apparently boarded first. And the third was Ephraim Kincaid. He was a man built of soft, expensive materials. His suit was fine wool, his vest was silk, and his face was pale and fleshy, but his eyes were like 2 cold, gray stones. He held a glass of brandy in one soft hand. He did not get up. "Sheriff Crowder," Kincaid said, his voice a smooth, low rumble. "You have had a productive evening." "We have them, Mr. Kincaid," Crowder said, his voice filled with a bootlicking pride. "And we have the merchandise." He dropped Clara's camera box and Harrow's briefcase onto the table. "Ah," Kincaid said. He looked at the 2 women, his eyes lingering on Clara, then on Tala, the photographer, and her guide. He smiled, a small, thin-lipped expression. "You have caused me a remarkable amount of trouble, Miss Monroe." "You are a thief and a killer, Kincaid," Clara said, her voice shaking, "but strong." Kincaid laughed, a genuine soft laugh. "I am a builder. My dear, I build the future. And the future requires sacrifice. It requires fuel. This land," he waved his hand, "is just fuel." Harrow, nervous and eager to please, pushed the briefcase forward. "Sir, this is the ledger she was carrying, her journal. She tried to pass it off as the real one. A pathetic bluff." Kincaid picked up the blank journal. He weighed it in his hand. "Yes, pathetic." He turned to the camera. "And the sheriff tells me she claimed the real pages were in this." His smile faded. He looked at Clara. "Is that true?" Clara said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the small, pot-bellied stove in the corner of the car, its grate glowing with red-hot coals. "It does not matter," Kincaid said. He stood. The train gave a lurch, a shriek of metal, and began to move. "The game is over." The car swayed as it picked up speed. Kincaid walked to the stove, holding Clara's blank journal. "Gentlemen," Kincaid said, raising his voice to be heard over the click-clack of the wheels, "to progress to the fires of industry." He turned, and with a small, theatrical flick of his wrist, he tossed the journal into the stove. The leather cover smoked, then curled, the pages catching fire. Crowder and Harrow raised their glasses. "To progress," Harrow echoed, his voice thin. Tala and Clara stood near the door, a single deputy guarding them. Tala watched the burning book. She looked at Clara. Clara was pale, but her eyes were burning with a cold, clear fire. "Now, for the camera," Kincaid said, turning. "The real prize." He started to unbuckle the straps. This was the moment. The train whistles screamed, a long, high wail that cut through the night. They were approaching a bridge. "Now," Tala whispered. It was not a word. It was an exhalation. Tala moved. She did not attack the deputy. She attacked the lamp. In one fluid motion, she lunged forward, grabbed the heavy kerosene lamp from the table, and hurled it to the floor. Glass shattered. Burning oil spread across the thick carpet, erupts in a whoosh of flame. Fire Harrow screamed, jumping back, his face white with terror. The car, already swaying, gave a violent lurch as it hit the first timbers of the bridge. Sloane was thrown to the floor. Kincaid stumbled back. In the chaos, Tala grabbed Clara. The door! The deputy, his attention on the fire, turned, raising his rifle. Tala was already on him. She did not use her knife. She used her hands, striking him in the throat with the edge of her palm. He crumpled, choking. Tala ripped the door open. The wind roared in, fanning the flames. Outside was a black, screaming void, the sound of the wheels on the wooden trestles deafening. Clara, go. Clara scrambled out onto the narrow brass railing of the observation platform. Tala was right behind her. Stop them! Kincaid roared, his face red, silhouetted against the growing fire inside the car. Crowder burst through the door, his shotgun in his hand. He saw them. 2 figures clinging to the outside of the car. He raised the shotgun. The roof, Tala yelled. She grabbed the brass ladder and hauled herself up. Clara, the camera box somehow still strapped to her back, followed. They were on top of the car. The wind was a solid, screaming wall of ice. It tried to peel them from the metal. Embers from the engine's smokestack flew past them like angry, red stars. Far below, in the starlight, Clara could see the glint of water in the bottom of a massive, black canyon, Devil's Span. The train was a rattling, roaring monster, and they were on its back. They are on the roof. Crowder's voice was a faint yell from below. A hatch on the car in front of them, a long, slatted baggage car, flew open, and 2 of Crowder's deputies began to climb out. Tala did not hesitate. She ran forward, leaping the gap between the cars. She met the first man as he was halfway out. She kicked him in the face. He fell back inside. The second man, on the roof, raised his rifle. Tala moved like a snake, her knife in her hand. The man fired, the shot going wild, the bullet screaming off into the night. Tala was on him. The fight was short, brutal, and silent. She used the butt of his own rifle to knock him unconscious, and he slumped to the roof. Clara, clinging to a vent pipe, watched, her heart in her throat. The hatch on Kincaid's car opened. Crowder himself was climbing out, his face a mask of fury. Tala! Clara screamed. Tala turned. More men were coming from the baggage car. She was caught between them. Clara looked down. Through the open hatch, she could see inside the private car. It was an inferno. The curtains were ablaze. The table, Kincaid, Harrow, and Sloane were gone, having fled to the front of the car, away from the fire on the observation deck. But the fire gave Clara an idea. She fumbled in her satchel, her fingers numb. The magnesium. The flash pan. She still had one left. Crowder, she shrieked, her voice thin in the wind. The sheriff turned. Halfway onto the roof, he looked at her, and he raised his shotgun. Clara stood up. She held the camera, not as a box, but as a weapon. She aimed it down. She saw him. She saw the deputies behind Tala. She saw the fire, the bridge, the night. She triggered the flash. A miniature sun exploded on the roof of the train. The white, chemical light was so bright it turned the night to day, the black canyon to a landscape of stark, terrifying shadows. The men screamed, hands flying to their faces, their world gone. Tala, the pin, Clara yelled, her voice raw. Tala understood. She did not run back to Clara. She ran forward, past the blinded deputies on the roof of the baggage car. She leaped to the next car, a simple flatbed. She looked for the coupling. It was a heavy, vertical iron pin. She grabbed it. It was cold, slick with rain. She pulled, it would not budge. The train, its brakes now screaming as the engineer sensed the fire, began to slow. The baggage car, full of armed, blinded men, slammed into the car Tala was on. Tala used the jolt. As the metal shrieked, she threw her entire body weight back, twisting the handle of the pin. It gave. She ripped the heavy iron bar free. The flatbed car separated from the baggage car. The baggage car, now uncoupled, loaded with men and weapons, began to slow. The rest of the train pulled away. It lurched, its metal wheels screaming on the tracks. It hit a curve in the bridge. The car jumped the track. It tipped, slow, agonizing. It hung for a single breathless second over the black abyss of Devil's Span, silhouetted against the flames of Kincaid's burning car. Then, with a groan of tearing metal, it fell. It vanished into the darkness. There was no splash, just a long, fading, collective scream. Tala stood on the back of the flatbed, her chest heaving. Clara stood on the roof of Kincaid's car, which was now a roaring bonfire on wheels. The burning car, still coupled, was pulling them. They had done it. They had turned their escape into an attack. They had the real evidence. They had a new, damning photograph, and their enemies were either blind, burning, or falling. The train, now in two burning pieces, shrieked and groaned, pulling itself off the bridge and into the darkness of the far canyon. The train was a serpent of fire in the night, its metal heart screaming as the engineer, blind to the fight, finally saw the inferno in his mirrors. Brakes grabbed, showering the tracks with sparks, the massive machine groaning in protest. Tala stood on the flatbed car, the wind of their passage stealing her breath. She looked back. Clara was still on the roof of Kincaid's burning car, clinging to a vent, the camera box a heavy burden on her back. Clara! Tala roared over the sound. The private car was now a moving chimney, flames licking 20 feet into the rainy air. The heat was a solid wall. Tala did not hesitate. She took 2 running steps and leaped across the 4-foot gap of screaming wind, landing hard on the roof, the metal hot even through her moccasins. She grabbed Clara's arm. "We have to jump," Tala yelled. Clara looked at her, her face a pale mask of terror, streaked with soot. Below them, the black, rocky ground of the mesa was a blur, but a slowing blur. "The bridge. We are past it." "And the train is stopping," Tala yelled back, pulling her toward the edge. "When it stops, his other men will be on us. We burn, or we are caught. We jump. Now!" Tala did not wait for an answer. She wrapped one arm around Clara's waist, grabbing the strap of the camera box with her other hand. "Hold your breath." She threw them from the train. It was not a fall, it was a collision. They plunged into the darkness, off the high track bed, and hit the ground in a brutal, tumbling roll. They went down a steep embankment, a cascade of mud, wet rock, and splintered sagebrush. Clara screamed. A sound cut short as her shoulder. The one protecting the camera slammed into the earth. They came to a stop in a deep, muddy gully, far below the tracks. Tala was up in an instant, her knife in her hand, her senses screaming. The rain was a deluge, a cold, gray sheet that turned the world to water and sound. She pulled Clara into the deeper shadow of the gully wall. "Clara, are you alive?" Clara moaned, clutching her right arm. I think so. My shoulder. Tala, I think it is broken." Tala's hands were quick, assessing, impersonal. She felt the joint. "It is not broken, but you hit hard. It is damaged." She pulled Clara to her feet. Clara cried out in pain, but she stood. Above them, the train had finally ground to a halt, a quarter-mile down the track. It was a black silhouette, its private car a roaring bonfire against the stormy sky. Lanterns, like angry fireflies, were already bobbing along the ground, fanning out. Men were yelling. "Kincaid," Tala breathed, her voice filled with a cold, hard anger. He is alive, and he is sending his hunters. We have to run, Clara gasped, cradling her arm. We cannot run, Tala said. We are on foot. We are injured. They have horses. She looked around, her eyes piercing the blackness. The red earth of the mesa was a sea of slick, treacherous mud. The rain was so heavy it was like a wall. Stealing sound, stealing sight. Lightning flashed, a brilliant, cold blue, illuminating the landscape for one stark second. It was not a courtroom. It was a battlefield, chosen by their enemy. They are not just searching, Tala whispered. They are herding us. The bobbing lanterns were not random. They were forming a long, slow crescent, pushing them, guiding them. Where Clara asked, her teeth chattering from the cold and the pain. Away from the tracks, Tala said. He knows we cannot go back. He is pushing us to the open ground, to the center of the mesa, to a place with no cover. They moved, stumbling, sliding. Tala took most of Clara's weight, half carrying her. The mud sucked at their boots, a greedy, heavy hand pulling them down. Every step was a fight. For an hour, the lanterns followed. The circle grew smaller. The rain never let up. Lightning cracked, one bolt after another, and the thunder was a physical blow, rolling across the plateau. They were forced into a wide, shallow basin, a place where the rain had pooled, the mud ankle-deep. Then the lanterns stopped moving in. They held their position, a silent, menacing ring of light. A new light approached, a single, bright lantern. It was not a guard. It was Ephraim Kincaid. He was flanked by Sloane and two other men in long dusters, their rifles held ready. Kincaid's fine suit was soaked, caked with mud. His face was pale, his hair plastered to his skull, but he was smiling. He stopped 30 yards away. An admirable effort. Miss Monroe, Kincaid called out, his voice calm, carrying easily over the rain. Truly, you almost cost me a very expensive rail car. You are finished, Kincaid, Clara yelled, her voice thin but defiant. We dropped Crowder. We dropped your guns. And we still have the ledger. She protectively touched the camera box, which Tala had slung over her own shoulder. Kincaid's smile widened. You dropped some of my men? Yes, the ones I hired, not the ones I own. As for the ledger, he looked at them, and his eyes were cold, dead. You have nothing. You're two wet, tired women, one of you injured, in the middle of my land, surrounded by my men. The game is over. We will fight you, Tala said, her voice a low growl. She pushed Clara behind her and drew her long, leather-wrapped knife. Its blade was dark in the rain. Fight me, Kincaid laughed. With what? With that little piece of steel? He raised his hand, a signal. From the darkness, a new group of figures moved into the ring of lantern light. Tala's hand tightened on her knife. These were not men with guns. It was a crowd of people, women in thin shawls, holding babies, old men and children, dozens of them. They were the families from the mining camp, the ones who lived in Kincaid's shanties, who bought their food at Kincaid's store. They were soaked, terrified, and numb with cold. Kincaid's armed men were not pointing guns at them. They were simply among them, escorting them, their lanterns held high. What is this? Clara whispered, horrified. This, Kincaid said, is my insurance. These good people were worried. They were waiting at the depot for the train. When they saw the fire, they panicked. My men are simply seeing them to safety. You are using them, Tala said, her voice raw. A human shield. Do not be so dramatic, Kincaid said. I am merely present, surrounded by my loyal employees. Who would dare fire a weapon into a crowd of women and children? Who would dare attack a man who is clearly engaged in an act of rescue? Tala saw it, the pure, cold evil of the man. He was not a brute like Crowder. He was a snake. She looked at him. He stood there, smug, protected by a wall of the very people she was trying to save. She had a clear line, 20 yards. His guards were watching the crowd, not her. The rain was a curtain. She was the fastest thing on this mesa. She could cross that distance in 3 seconds. She could sink her knife into his soft, pale throat before his guards even raised their rifles. She could end this. Her muscles tensed. This was the moment. The man who had ordered the fire at Coyote Wash. The man who had taken her brother. The man whose shadow had poisoned the land. Her whole life had been leading to this single, wet, muddy night. Revenge. It was there, a hot, bright coal in her chest. Her eyes narrowed. She saw his face. And then, a flash of lightning illuminated the crowd. She saw another face, a small boy, no older than 8, clinging to his mother's skirt. He was crying, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. He was the same age as her brother, the day he died. Tala looked from the boy to Kincaid. If she attacked, Kincaid's men would fire. They would fire into the crowd. They would fire at her, and they would hit the women. They would hit the boy. She would be the one to bring the fire. She would be the one to get them killed. Her warrior's oath, the one she had sworn to her ancestors, protect the people, harm no one who does not hold a weapon. Justice was not this. Justice was not killing one man if it meant harming an innocent. Justice was saving the land. Revenge was just this. Her breath left her in a long, shuddering sigh. The hot coal in her chest turned to cold ash. She could not. Her hand, which had been gripping the knife so hard her knuckles were white, relaxed. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered her arm. She slid the long blade back into its sheath at her hip. She had placed the lives of the innocent before her own hatred. The rain, cold and clean, washed the mud from her face. Clara watched her, saw the internal war, and saw its end. She saw the choice. Tala looked at Kincaid. Her face was calm. "We surrender," she said, her voice clear and strong. Clara gasped. "Tala, no, we cannot." "We surrender," Tala said again. She raised her hands, palms open. Kincaid smiled. A smile of absolute victory. A wise decision. He started to walk forward. "Now, give me the camera." "Stop." The voice was not Tala's. It was not Clara's. It was new, and it came from the darkness behind them. Everyone froze. A new set of lights appeared on the ridge above the basin. Not lanterns, torches, and horses. A group of riders, silhouetted against the storm, sat watching. "Who is that?" Sloane hissed, raising his rifle. A single rider urged his horse down the muddy slope. He was young, wrapped in a heavy wool blanket, his face grim. Shandin Tala called out, her voice breaking for the first time. Shandin reined in his horse, which stomped nervously. He was not alone. Behind him, 3 other Dine riders followed, their faces hard. One of them led a heavy pack mule. "We saw the fire, sister," Shandin said, his eyes on Kincaid, then on the crowd of miners. "Atsa saw it from the mesa. He said the fire would mean you were trapped. He said you would need this." "Need what?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. "More guns." "No," Shandin said. He gestured to the pack mule. One of the riders began unlashing the heavy oilcloth-wrapped bundle. He said guns are not enough. He said words are the new arrows. The rider pulled the cover away. In the flickering torchlight, Clara saw it. It was heavy, black cast iron, a small, portable printing press, a hand-crank model. Kincaid stared. "What is this, some kind of tribal joke? A printing press in a rainstorm?" Clara stared at it. The press, the ledger pages, safe in her camera box. The photograph of Crowder, the photograph of Harlan. The decision Tala had made, not revenge, justice. A wild, brilliant, terrible idea bloomed in Clara's mind. She started to laugh. It was a strange, choked sound, but it was a laugh. She looked at Kincaid, her face lit by the lightning, her eyes burning. "It is not a joke, you bastard," she said, her voice ringing out, strong and clear. "It is the end of your world." She turned to Shandian. "Do you have paper ink?" Shandian nodded. "A whole box. The missionary had everything." "You wanted the ledger, Kincaid," Clara yelled, moving toward the press. "You wanted the proof. Well, you can have it. In fact," she smiled, a fierce, painful expression. "Everyone can. We are going to print it. We are going to print all of it. For every man, woman, and child in Ash Hollow." Tala looked at her, then at the press, and she understood. The choice was made, not a knife in the dark, but a flood of light. Kincaid's face, for the first time, showed a flicker of genuine fear. "This is madness. It is libel. Sloan, seize them. Seize that machine." Sloan and the guards raised their rifles. Shandine and his riders moved their horses, forming a line between Kincaid and the press. They unslung their own rifles. A standoff, armed guards on one side, armed Dine on the other, and in the middle, a crowd of miners' families, who were no longer a passive shield. They were watching. They were listening. They had heard. "A ledger," one of the miners whispered. "He is going to print it," another said. The power was shifting, dissolving in the rain. Ephraim Kincaid's face was a mask of disbelief, quickly hardening into pure, cold fury. "Seize them! Sloan, I gave you an order. Fire on those savages." Sloan raised his rifle, his face grim, his eyes on Shandian. The other guards followed his lead, their weapons clicking as they aimed. "No," a voice roared from the crowd. It was not Tala. It was one of the miners, a big man with a face like a shovel, his clothes caked in mud. He stepped forward, out of the shield, and into the space between the guards and the Dine. "You will not. We have heard her. Let her speak." "Get back in line, you fool," Sloan snarled. "Who are you to tell me?" the miner shouted, his voice raw with a sudden, newfound rage. "Kincaid's dog. We are tired of being dogs." Another miner stepped forward. Then another, the human shield. The wall of terrified, passive victims was dissolving. It was becoming a crowd, an angry, curious mob. The women and children pulled back, but the men, their faces streaked with rain and soot, moved forward, forming a new line, a ragged, angry wall between Kincaid and the press. "We want to see it," one yelled. "Print the damn paper," another roared. Kincaid looked at the crowd, his loyal employees, and saw their faces. He saw the mutiny. His power, built on fear and silence, was evaporating in the rain. "You are all fired," he screamed, his voice cracking. "You will be blacklisted. You will starve." "We are already starving," the big miner yelled back, "and now we know why. Because you steal it, now print it. Lady, print the truth." Clara, her shoulder a blaze of agony, stumbled to the press. Tala was at her side, her hand steadying her. Shandian and his men, protected by the miners, set up the small machine, their movements fast and practiced. They worked in the rain, the torchlight and lanterns creating a chaotic, hellish circle of light. "The pages! Tala!" Clara gasped, the pain making her vision swim. Tala pulled the camera from her own back. She tore it open, her knife flashing as she cut the sealed lining. She pulled out the rolled, oilcloth-wrapped pages of the red ledger. They were dry. "Shandian, the ink," Tala commanded. "We cannot set type here. Not in this mud," Shandian said, his face tight. "We do not need to," Clara said, her voice shaking but fierce. She grabbed the first page, the one with the list of names, Harrow, Crowder, Sloan, and the amounts. This is the one we print first." She was not going to typeset it. She was a photographer. She grabbed a fresh, blank plate from her satchel. She laid the ledger page on a flat stone. "Tala, hold the torches, all of them, close." Tala and the Dine riders brought their torches in, creating a ring of bright, smoky light. Clara worked with a frantic, desperate speed. She coated the plate with her chemicals, She placed it in the camera. She placed the ledger page on the stone, pinning it flat. "What is she doing?" Sloane hissed. Clara was making a negative. A perfect, one-to-one copy of the ledger page, captured by the camera's lens. "Now," Clara panted. "The press." They did not use type. Shandian, a silversmith, understood. He took the developed negative, a perfect image of the writing on glass, and locked it into the press. He inked the glass itself. It was a crude lithograph, a desperate, brilliant invention born of mud and rain. "Paper," Clara yelled. The miner handed a stack of dry paper, which Shandian's man had kept in an oilskin wrap. Shandian laid the first sheet. He cranked the press. Clack, squeeze, roll. He pulled the first sheet free. It was a mess. Ink smeared, blurred by the rain. But it was there. The writing, the names, the numbers. "Another," Shandian yelled. He inked, cranked, pulled. The second one was clearer. The third, clearer still. Crank, pull, crank, pull. Within 5 minutes, they had a stack of 50, 100. The miners were grabbing them, passing them back into the crowd. "My God," a man whispered, his voice full of awe, reading the page by lantern light. "Harrow, $50,000. And Crowder, 10,000. 4 clearing squatters." "That is us. We are the squatters." A low, animal roar began in the crowd. It started in their chests, a sound of betrayal so deep it was almost a moan. "Sloane! Stop them!" Kincaid shrieked, his composure shattered. He was just a terrified, soft man in the rain. Sloane raised his rifle. "Fire over their heads, scatter them." Before he could pull the trigger, a new voice, hard as iron and backed by formal law, cut through the night. "Mr. Ephraim Kincaid." The crowd parted. A line of 6 men on horseback rode into the light. They were not miners. They were not dying. They were soldiers. Their blue uniforms and yellow stripes precise and clean. They were United States cavalry. At their head was a man with a dark, drooping mustache and a face that looked like it had been carved from hardwood. A badge was pinned to his coat, a real one. "I am United States Marshal Ortega," the man said, his voice quiet, but it cut through the noise of the crowd. "And I have a federal warrant for the arrest of Judge Silas Harrow on charges of conspiracy and fraud." Judge Harrow, who had been hiding behind Kincaid, let out a small, terrified sound. Clara pushed her way through the crowd, her face pale, her good arm holding the printed ledger page. "Marshal, thank God. I am Clara Monroe. I am the one who sent the wire." "I received it, ma'am," Ortega said, his eyes taking in the scene. The press, the armed dine, the angry mob. Kincaid. "My wire from Santa Fe was delayed by the storm and by other influences. I was not expecting this." "We have the proof, Marshal," Clara said, holding up the sheet. "We have it all." Harrow saw his name on the paper in her hand. He saw the cavalry. He saw the mob. His nerve broke. He turned and ran, scrambling back up the muddy gully toward the dark. "Do not let him escape," Ortega ordered. Tala was already moving. She did not run. She simply flowed through the mud, intercepting him. She did not draw her knife. She put out her foot. Harrow, running blind, hit it and went down, face first, into the deep, cold mud. Tala put one boot on the back of his neck, holding him down. "He is secured." "Marshal," she called out, her voice calm. 2 of Ortega's men dismounted, pulled Harrow up, and bound his hands. Crowder, who had been forgotten near the burning train, saw his chance. He, too, ran, but not toward the dark. He ran back toward Ash Hollow, toward his office, his jail. "Stop him," a miner yelled. The crowd surged. They did not need a marshal. The big miner who had spoken first led the charge. The mob of angry men flowed through the night, a river of fury. They caught Crowder at the edge of the street, dragged him from his horse, and hauled him, kicking and screaming, to the marshal. They threw him at Ortega's feet. Here is the rest of your corruption. Marshal, the miner spat, take him. Ortega looked at the bound, mud-caked sheriff, then at the mob. He nodded. He is in federal custody. The rain began to soften. The storm had broken. The sky in the east was turning a pale, cold gray. Dawn was coming. Ephraim Kincaid stood alone. His guards, Sloan included, had seen the cavalry, seen the mob, and had simply vanished. They had melted into the darkness, loyal to the money, not the man. Kincaid was a solitary, ridiculous figure in a ruined suit. He looked at Ortega. "Marshal," Kincaid said, his voice regaining a fraction of its smooth confidence, "this is a misunderstanding. I am the victim here. These terrorists attacked my train. They have incited a riot." Ortega looked at him, his face unreadable. "Is that so, Mr. Kincaid?" "Yes, I demand you arrest this woman," he pointed at Clara, "for theft and sabotage. And this one," he pointed at Tala, "for assault and murder." Tala's head snapped up. "I killed no one who was not armed and trying to kill me." "He is lying. Marshal," Clara said, her voice shaking with pain and exhaustion. "He has the real ledger. His men stole it. The one in my camera. It is just the pages. He has the book." Ortega looked at the burning train car, which was now a blackened, hissing hulk. "If he did, ma'am, it is ashes now, along with your journal." A cold dread hit Clara. He was right. Kincaid had burned the evidence. Her pages were just pages. The book itself, the proof of when it was written, was gone. It was her word against his. Kincaid smiled. He had seen it too. Exactly. Marshal, a tragic fire. But as you can see, I am the one with the clean hands. I will, of course, be filing a full report. The standoff was back. It was not guns. It was law. The sun broke the horizon. The day, after the storm, was brilliant, cold, and clean. In the center of Ash Hollow, the train station, its depot still standing, became a makeshift court. Marshal Ortega sat at the station master's desk. Tala, Clara, and Shandian stood on one side. Ephraim Kincaid stood on the other. The miners, their face hard in the new light, filled the room, standing, watching, waiting. Clara's arm was in a crude sling Tala had made. Shandian and his men had taken the press and set it up on the platform outside. They were still printing. Copies of the ledger page were passing through the town. From hand to hand. "Mr. Kincaid," Ortega said, "you are a powerful man. This woman makes a serious accusation." "An insane one," Kincaid said, dabbing his face with a silk handkerchief. "She has these," Ortega said, holding up the ledger pages. "And this," he held up the glass plate, "the photograph, the one Clara had taken on the train roof. It was a miracle of chemistry. In the center, in stark, brilliant detail, was Crowder, his face a mask of rage, holding his shotgun. Behind him, Harrow, his mouth open in a scream, and behind them, Sloan, his rifle raised. It was a picture of a conspiracy in action." Kincaid sneered. "A photograph. A trick of light. It proves nothing." "It proves they were there," Ortega said. "It proves they were fighting. It makes them liars. That is enough for me." He turned to his deputy. "Take Harrow and Crowder to the holding car. They are going to Santa Fe." A cheer went up from the miners. "As for you, Mr. Kincaid," Ortega began. "You cannot touch me, Marshal," Kincaid said, his voice soft. "I have broken no law that you can prove. You have no warrant for me, and my associates in Santa Fe and Washington will hear of this. I will own this valley by noon." Tala stepped forward. "No, you will not." All eyes turned to her. "This is not your land to own," she said, her voice quiet, but it filled the room. "This is Dine land. You have come with your fire and your false papers. We have the truth, Marshal. We do not just ask for this man's arrest. We demand the return of our land. We demand this mine be shut down, today." Ortega sighed. "Ma'am, my jurisdiction is complicated. I am here for federal crimes, land rights, treaties. That is a different court. I cannot just—" "You can," Tala said. "You can stop him from digging. You can honor the truth, you see." The air was tense. It was law versus justice. A new figure pushed through the door, a young man in a telegrapher's uniform, his face pale. Marshal Ortega." "What is it, son?" "A wire. For Mr. Kincaid. From his partners. From everyone. In New York. In Washington." Kincaid smiled. "Ah, my associates. You see, Marshal, this is them, putting a stop to this nonsense." He held out his hand. "Give it to me." The telegrapher looked at him, terrified. "Sir, they told me to read it. Aloud." "What?" "They said, there are papers being printed. In Santa Fe. In New York. About a ledger. About bribes. About a massacre on a train. They said, sir, they said the stock for the railroad has been suspended. They said your assets, all of them, have been frozen." Kincaid's face went from smug to gray. The color drained from him, as if a plug had been pulled. "What? What did you say?" "Your partners have turned on you, sir," the young man whispered. They are calling you a liability. They are cooperating with the investigation. They said, you are on your own." Clara looked at Tala. She had not just sent a wire to Ortega. She had sent one to a friend at the New York Times, with the core details of the ledger, before she ever left Santa Fe. It was her insurance, the telegraph lines, which Kincaid had used to build his empire, had just been used to tear it down. Ephraim Kincaid stood alone in the train station. He was not shot. He was not in chains. He was simply finished. His money was gone. His power, built on the illusion of invincibility, had vanished. He looked at Tala. He looked at Clara. And for the first time, his cold, gray eyes showed a human emotion. Pure, unadulterated, bottomless hatred. He did not run. He did not speak. He just stood, a soft, ruined man, as Marshal Ortega motioned to his deputies. "Mr. Kincaid," Ortega said, his voice flat, "I do not have a warrant for you, but you are a material witness, and I do not think it is safe for you to be left alone with these good people. You will come with us." As the deputies took his arms, Clara raised her camera. Her arm throbbed, but she held it steady. She looked at the group, at Tala, her face strong and calm. At Shandon, his arms crossed, proud. At the big miner, his face streaked with dirt, a printed ledger page in his hand. At Marshal Ortega, his face grim. And at the dine riders and the miners, standing together, enemies no more. She took the picture, a new memory, a shared one. The high desert wind still had a voice, but it was no longer the sharp wail of a storm. It was a quieter sound, a sigh that moved through the valley, carrying the scent of clean water and new corn. It had been 1 year. Red Mesa still held the sunset, a blaze of purple and crimson, but the land below it was changed. Where there had been only dry earth and skeletal brush, there was now a small, deep green patch of life. The ancient irrigation ditch, the one Atsa had shown them on the old hide map, was flowing. It had taken 6 months of back-breaking labor, a debt paid by the miners who had stayed after Kincaid's empire collapsed, working alongside Shandin and the Dian families. But the water was back. The ranch house was new, built by those same hands. It was neither a settler's cabin nor a hogan. It was made of thick adobe, round like the Dian way, but with a wide wooden porch and square windows that faced both the rising and the setting sun. It was a house of compromise. From the porch, you could hear the sound of children. A small stone building, the valley's first school, sat near the head of the spring. In the cool evening, The children's voices spilled out, reciting their lessons in 2 languages. Tala Nez stood on the porch, her hands resting on the smooth wood railing. She was watching the sheep move in for the night. The stillness in her was deeper now, the old, sharp edges of grief worn smooth. Though not gone, the Land Memory Fund, which she and Clara administered, had secured the valley. The deeds were filed not under one name, but under a trust, one that bound the dying families and the miners who had stayed to the land, together. Clara Monroe came out of the house, drying her hands on an apron. Her hair was shorter, practical, and she moved with a new, grounded strength. Her right shoulder, the one that had hit the gully, still ached in the cold, a permanent reminder. She was no longer just an observer. She was a builder. Inside, the house was quiet. Atsa, his face looking more ancient than ever, sat by the fire, mending a piece of tack. He lived with them now, the grandfather of the new valley. He no longer needed to warn of the future. He was busy telling the stories of the past, ensuring the children did not forget. The old fears were still there. They were ghosts that walked in the daylight. Tala still woke in the deep night sometimes, her heart pounding, listening for the sound of unshod horses. Clara still flinched at the smell of heavy cigar smoke, but they met the ghosts together. Tala would go to the water ditch, her hands in the life-giving mud, and remember her purpose. Clara would go to her dark room, a small, clean shed behind the house, and she would print the truth. In the center of the small settlement, Shundian's hammer rang out, a sharp, clean sound. He was teaching 3 apprentices, one of them the son of the big miner who had first defied Sloan. His silverwork was becoming famous, sold by an honest dealer in Santa Fe, bringing real money back to the valley. The artifacts of their fight had found new homes, the Red Ledger, its leather cover scorched, its pages stained by rain and mud, sat under thick glass in the main hall of the Santa Fe courthouse. Marshal Ortega had put it there himself. A plaque beside it read, "The Kincaid Ledger, a lesson in truth." Harrow and Crowder were in a federal prison, their names a curse. Ephraim Kincaid, his empire dissolved by his panicked partners in the East, had never faced a trial. He had died of a heart attack, alone in a Washington hotel, a ruined man. Clara's photographs had their own life. She had an exhibition in Santa Fe, in a gallery on the main plaza. It was called Red Mesa We Remember. The critics had called it a new, stark kind of history. The images were brutal and beautiful. The picture of Crowder, his face a mask of hate, taken in the flash on the burning train. The picture of Harlan, blinded on the rim of the canyon. The picture of the miners and the Dine, standing together in the mud, facing Kincaid. And there was a final picture, the largest one in the show. It was a photograph of Tala. Her back was mostly to the camera, her black hair undone. She was kneeling in the dirt, in front of a small, crying miner's child, a little girl who had lost her mother in the chaos. Tala was gently, her strong, warrior's hands impossibly tender, tying a blue wool neckerchief around the child's neck. The mail rider came on Tuesdays, bringing letters and the newspapers from Santa Fe. That evening, he brought a small, square box wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. It was addressed to Clara. The postmark was from Boston. She opened it on the porch as the sun began to sink and the air turned cool. Tala stood beside her. Inside the box, nestled on dark blue velvet, was a heavy bronze medal hanging from a striped ribbon, an army medal. Beneath it was a letter, folded many times. The handwriting was thin and shaky. Clara unfolded it. She read it silently first, her breath catching in her throat. "What is it?" Tala asked, her voice low. Clara looked up, her eyes bright with tears. She took a deep, shuddering breath. "It is from my father." She began to read it aloud, her voice quiet but clear in the twilight. "My dearest Clara, I write to you not as a father, for I have forfeited that right. but as a penitent. I have seen your exhibition. I traveled to Santa Fe for the trial of Judge Harrow. I sat in the back of the courtroom. I heard your testimony. I heard the testimony of the dying man, Atza, and I saw your photographs. For 20 years, I have carried this medal, a token of my bravery at Coyote Wash. I have told myself I was a soldier, following orders, bringing civilization to a savage land. I saw your photograph of the burning Hogan, the one I tried to destroy, the one you saved. I saw my own face, smiling, and I knew, in that moment, what I was. I read the New York papers. They have used your evidence to tell the full story. They call me a butcher. They are right. I am returning this medal. It does not belong to me. It belongs to the people of Red Mesa, to the descendants of those I wronged. I have learned from you, my daughter, that true bravery is not in the violence of a uniform, but in the courage to speak the truth. No matter the cost, I have sent a full, public confession to the newspapers. It is all I have left to give. I do not ask for your forgiveness. I ask only that you deliver this, with my deepest and most profound apology. I was wrong. Clara finished reading. A single tear tracked through the dust on her cheek. She did not wipe it away. Tala reached into the box. She lifted the medal. It was heavy in her hand. This piece of metal, this symbol of the fire and the blood. She looked at it, then at Clara. She saw the pain, but also the release, the final ghost being laid to rest. She held it for a long moment. Then, she walked from the porch, across the small yard, to the schoolhouse. Atza was just leaving, the children scattering. Tala held out the medal to him. Atza looked at the bronze, then at Tala, then at Clara. He took it. He did not throw it into the desert. He did not bury it. He turned and went back inside the school. He hung it on the wall, next to the map of the territory, just above the children's desks. "Let it stay," Atza said, his voice quiet. "Let them see it every day. Let them know the cost of the lie, and let them know the strength of the truth." The circle was closed. That night, the mesa was bathed in a brilliant, cold moonlight. Clara and Tala stood on the porch, shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the land that was finally, truly, their own. The wind in the chimes was the only sound. Clara leaned her head against Tala's shoulder. It was a familiar, easy gesture now. Her good arm found its way around Tala's waist. "It is not perfect," Clara whispered, "but it is good." Tala looked at the woman beside her, this Bilagana who had fallen into her life, carrying a storm, this photographer who had seen her, truly seen her, this woman who had not flinched, who had not run, who had stood and fought with her. Tala put her arm around Clara's shoulders, pulling her close against the cold. The past was not forgotten. It was redeemed. Justice had not been a single verdict in a courtroom. It was the daily, quiet work of planting corn, of teaching children, of telling the truth, and of mending what had been broken. And love, they had learned, was not a single bright flash of light. It was this, a daily commitment, a shared breath in the darkness, the promise to stand together and watch the dawn. "Yes," Tala said, her voice soft in Clara's hair. "It is good." Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to Wild West Tales. Give this video a like and hit that hype button so more folks can hear this story.